Welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and it's probably been about 5 months or so since I've done an update on the tanks. Reason is, well, I've been busy with everything else in life, and honestly, I just haven't been putting the time or money into the tanks. So really, there hasn't been that much to update. Yeah, I put some money in, we've had a lot of gains, a lot of losses, and we're gonna cover all of that kind of stuff today. But I kind of think that's going to be the path forward for this channel for a while. These tanks, they're big, mature, they're just kind of growing. So I think sporadic updates going forwards is kind of how I'm going to do things. So you see the 210 behind me, looks pretty good. Let's start with the little P&W Customs 1 gallon. And here it is, the P&W Customs 1 gallon. Overall, this tank is doing really well. I'm actually getting some pretty decent coral growth. You see the little leptos, they're encrusting onto the rocks. They look pretty good. The pavona in back hasn't really been encrusting or anything, but it's holding color and looks pretty good. The candy cane, I believe, is an addition since you last saw it. And then the Japanese Nepthia, it's pulled in from the water change yesterday, but it's been doing really well in here. And then my 1 Xenia has turned to 3. The single Paligrandis head I put in is now 2. So overall, those are some pretty great gains. To maintenance this tank, I've been doing 100% water changes about monthly. Now that goes against everything we ever talk about in this hobby, but it's working really well on this tank. So early on I was having some algae issues and I tried putting a snail in here and he died, and this tank is so small it polluted this entire tank. So that's when I did my first 100% water change, and I was so impressed by the success I've just kind of continued to do that. I have added a bag of carbon in GFO to the filter in the back section, but that's really all I'm doing. Carbon, GFO, monthly 100% water changes, and this tank is so easy. I don't feed it. I have added no food to this tank. I will put a little of the purple non-sulfur bacteria from Hydrospace in there once in a while, and that's it. That's all I'm doing this tank. It sits on my counter, looks beautiful. I love it. 24 gallon. 24 gallons looking pretty good. It did have some challenges early summer. Heater failed on. That's a common thing you hear out of me. I think I'll get an ink bird for this tank. I've got it on that P&W Customs we just saw, and they work great. The only new coral in here is this branching helio tree. This is the coolest thing. If you're used to regular helios, this is basically how the babies are born. The sprout comes off the helio and grows into this. There's probably about 4 heads of helio right there. That's super cool. I love that. When the heater failed on, my leathers struggled, but as you can see, the Nepthias are coming back. The pink one I thought was dead, but a little piece of it remained and has grown back. So that's Japanese pink Nepthia. Next to it is just your standard green Sinularia. Both are doing fantastic. My Zoa garden continues to thrive. This is something that had really died out before I got the tank back, and it's really growing back. Next to it is the Leptocerus. We've got the gold and the jack-o'-lantern. This stuff is so bulletproof. If you're looking for a cool coral that's easy, low light, get Leptocerus. My little reef koi bounces were dead. They were gone, couldn't find them. Now I've got 3. They've grown back. It's an aquarium miracle. And that little track thing next to them, not even 100% sure what that is. I believe it's actually a Lobo, but it sure looks tracky now. When I first got it, it looked very Lobo-ish. I'm not even sure what it is. That thing just kills it. I've had that thing for years. It does great. The blushing leather behind it is one of my favorite leathers. It's like a Sinularia, but it's a little more lower down, packed, and it's got this nice kind of burgundy color to it. I love that coral. Overall, this tank is just doing really well. All I do to it, water changes, feed the fish. That one little Scopus who's been in here forever, this tank really has stunted his growth, but he doesn't seem too big for it, so I let it ride. And there we have it, the 24 gallon. This tank is so easy, and yet looks great. I don't really do anything to it other than a 5-gallon water change weekly. I haven't been adding coral to it. Like I said, the Helio and maybe that bubble are the only thing I've added to it. And it looks like this. I love it. So a few little struggles on the little tank. Snail died, heater failed on, killed some coral, but I caught that pretty early. I really noticed it with the leather corals. The leather started just kind of dying back, and that's how I noticed it. I really didn't see a lot of damage to anything else, so I got off super lucky there. The big tanks had a few more challenges with it. So let's talk about the big tanks. Let's keep it real. The good, the bad, the ugly. So when I first got this tank back, the fish were looking pretty thin. They weren't eating like they're supposed to. And I've really been working just on their nutrition to fatten them up. And it's going pretty well. The Flamingi's a big fatty. All my clowns are fattened up. In fact, the only one who's a little thin still is the yellow tang with HLLE. And honestly, that's not gonna go away. That fish is just gonna be in a slow decline, and it just sucks. There's nothing I can do about it. But I'll do my best to give him the best life I can. One of the bigger problems I was struggling with was Aptasia, and you can see I've still got a few left. I added about 5 peppermint shrimp to this tank. I haven't seen them in months, but the Aptasia seems pretty under control. There's a couple little ones in the tank, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. Before I put the peppermint shrimp in, I was using sodium hydroxide, which is basically lye to get rid of some of the Aptasia in this tank. And I think that was a bad idea. This is my old Heliofungia, sitting on the bottom in case it grows a stalk and grows back. I doubt that it will, but I'm blaming the sodium hydroxide for this stuff dying. When I'd put the sodium hydroxide in the tank, it would blow all over everything. Well, it's a hardcore caustic. Like, those polyps had to be catching it, pulling it in, and I'd see all these weird results afterwards. Yeah, I don't like it. I'm not using it. I'm blaming that for killing a few coral in this tank. Overall, though, we've had a lot more growth than loss. One of the newest coral in this tank is one that I picked up at Weekend at the Wholesaler, which I have discontinued. I am no longer doing it. But so you guys know, this is the kind of stuff I was selling. It was insane. This is a marbled green bubble. This thing came from Indonesia. Big, giant thing. Like, there's my hand. Look how big that thing is. And it's that neon marble green. That thing's killer. I love that coral. And along with new bubbles, this little green one's new right there. And so is this one. These were both ones that I picked up at Weekend at the Wholesaler, and they were fantastic. They're happy, they're healthy. Like, look at this little bubble garden I'm building it. I'm absolutely loving how this is coming together. And this green one with the big fat bubbles on it, yeah, that's what's left of that big giant bubble colony I had. Still got a little piece. We'll grow it back. If anything, my Euphyllia is doing too good. It just keeps growing into each other. I ended up cutting large chunks and moving stuff around to replant and just make it all fit. And it's not. I'm getting overgrown with Euphyllia. Like, we've got octospawn up here that these are really high-end, pricey corals. I should be moving those out to give those guys room to grow. But gold octo, the neon green, we've got gold hammer below it, and it's just all doing fantastic. The torches above are doing okay. The front green and purple one is doing fantastic. The one behind it, I had a head die back. It's been kind of holding this look and shape for about a month now, so I think it's going to survive. But this is one I'm blaming on that treatment, though the reaction's kind of delayed. So was this the sodium hydroxide, the lye, or was this something else? I mean, torches will totally do that, just have a head die for no apparent reason. This little front island's doing pretty good. The chalice is doing great. The Monty is doing fantastic. The two leptos are just great. Like, everything here is how you want it to be. The Green Slimer and Dragon's Breath acros are really doing good. These are two that I didn't expect to survive everything they went through, and they've pulled through great. I think maybe some of us overestimate how difficult Acropora is. My brains are doing pretty good. The big moon brain is doing fantastic. The Christmas brain below it is not, and I think it's because it's getting overgrown by the coral above it that's shading it out. That being said, the Platygyra behind it is still holding up, so not good placement, but really I don't have another place for these coral. The center of this tank is dominated by this Montipora shelf that grew out over the years, and I've kind of to plant a bunch of other stuff, and it's worked out incredibly. The Monties look fantastic, and then it's given me places to put Acropora, so we get some branching Stucker, we got some branching Monty towards the back, we've got some LPS like the Duncans mixed in there, even some soft coral back there, and we got that big devil's hand. That devil's hand is a big bright green devils, and everything's round, growing around it. It just looks spectacular. As you get back up here, there's brains mixed in the background. Like, this whole section is exactly what I want out of my reef. Like, this is my favorite part right now of this tank, and it's just killing it. It's all gonna get too big and overgrow each other, and it's gonna become a maintenance nightmare, but right now, it's perfect. And here's just a little different angle of it. It just looks so spectacular. We've got the grandis, we've got the frog spawn and the hammers. You can see the blushing leather back there. It's just the perfect little mixed reef island. It's high light, high flow, like everything right here is just competing for resources. And amazingly, it's all working. And there's just something I love about soft corals and leathers, and that's what this entire right side of the tank is dedicated to. They're all overgrown. They all need trimmed, which comes with its own host of problems to cut all these back. Right now, I'm just letting them grow out, grow into each other, and that's going to cause even more problems in the future. But the look of it right now, I think, is fantastic. We got 5 different big leathers and a few smaller ones mixed in, and then that giant clam. That thing is massive. Like, there's my hand against that clam. It's a huge clam, and it all just does great. Those clowns, they live on that clam. I've got 3 of them there. The whole thing, it's what I want. So there we have it. There's the 210. It's really come back. There's some stuff I'd like to see fixed. We're starting to see some cyanobacteria in there. I'd really like to upgrade the lighting on this tank, maybe add some more A360Xs, something like that. Nothing too crazy. Those flatworms are still in there. They're always going to be a problem. And eventually, I'd like to get a couple more tangs for this tank. But honestly, right now, it looks so good. And I don't have a ton of time or money that I'm really just happy with what I have and enjoying what I've got. And in some ways, I think that's a hard lesson to learn in life. Enjoy what you've got, especially when it looks like this. All right, thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm sure I'll make another update video someday soon.